Okay, so we're doing our very last lesson of the unit, and that is 8-9, the quadratic formula and the discriminant. And so all this is finding a solution to a quadratic. And we've been doing that. However, this is just a different way of finding a solution. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. This right here is your quadratic formula. Okay, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Now, the formula looks a little bit daunting. However, if you know how to plug in the given information and solve an equation, it should be easy. And by the time you are done with quadratics in Algebra 2, you will have this formula memorized. Okay, so here is an example. Right here, 2x squared plus 3x minus 5. And I plugged the information in for you, but we're going to practice plugging it in and we're going to practice solving one of them. We'll do another one together, and then I'm going to have you do one on your own. So I am going to rewrite my, I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, I'm going to write my quadratic equation here. 2x squared plus 3x minus 5 equals 0. And I am going to plug in all of my information. So I have x equals, oh, sorry. X equals, okay, we have a negative b, which is just like a -1 times b. Now, we should remember this. I'm sure that you guys do, but 2 is our a, 3 is our b, -5 is our c. Okay. So -1 times b is going to be -1 times 3. According to our formula, it's going to be plus or minus the square root of, so we're going to put plus or minus the square root of, and then in our formula, we have b squared. So we're going to take b in our quadratic equation, which is 3, and we are going to square it. Then we're going to subtract 4 times a and times c. So times a, our a is 2, times c, our c is a -5. So we have our numerator down, and we're going to divide that all by 2 times a. So 2 times 2, because our a is 2. So at this point, we are going to solve this equation. What you have to do first is solve what is inside the square root first. That is called our discriminant. We're going to solve everything inside of our square root first. And then we are going to square root whatever that is. And then we're going to solve our denominator and set up 2 equations to get 2 solutions. So when we solve in here, I like to kind of solve it on the top of the square root. So I know that 3 squared is 9. I know that -4 times 2 is a -8. And then we have to multiply that by -5. And that part you could probably do in your head. Okay, do you guys understand that part?
Yeah.
Okay, now we have 9 minus 8 times the -5, which is a positive 40. So plus 40. And this equals 49. Okay, so I've just solved what is inside of the square root. Before we go on, are there any questions on how I did that? Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this whole thing. Okay, before I do that, 2 times 2 is 4, and -1 times 3 is a -3. Okay. Now I'm going to rewrite everything I have. I have a -3 plus or minus the square root of 49 over 2 times 2, which was 4. Okay. Now I'm gonna square root my 49. I have -3 plus or minus 7 over 4. So that's how I solved that equation. So did everybody understand? Is that okay? Yes, Ethan.
Which one here? Plus or minus?
That's what we're gonna figure out now. Next, remember, we're supposed to have two solutions. Those solutions are where our parabola crosses the x-axis. So I'm gonna set up two equations over here. I'm gonna set up x equals -3 plus 7 over 4. Oh, sorry. I set it up as -3 plus 7 over 4. And I also set one up as -3 minus 7 over 4. And this is how you get your two solutions. So let's go ahead and solve this. -3 plus 7 is 4. And 4 divided by 4 is 1. So that is solution number 1. Then we do the next one. -3 minus 7 is -10 over 4. We simplify this and we get -5 halves. So x equals 1 and -5 halves. Are there any questions on this? Yes.
I don't know if maybe because we were here for 8-6 and 8-7, but I thought the solutions were the opposite of that same number, but it's positive and negative.
Okay, so no, not all the time. For the one that you were here for, yes. And then we went on to the next lesson where you had two different solutions, and then this one continues that. So two different. Okay, now let's try example 7. So in example 7, yes, I'm sorry, Gabby.
I don't get like
The plug-in part here. Okay, so here we have, let me do this really quick. So 2 right here is our A. Do you get that part? The 2 is our A in the equation right here. So 2 will go in every place where the A is. Okay. And then 3 is our B. So we plug that in where our B is every time. And then -5 is our C. So we plug that in right there. Does that make more sense? Okay. Well, let's practice that right here. Okay. So we have this equation. And we have x equals, okay, our first part of our formula is -b. So we're going to put a -1 times b. Well, 8 is b. So -1 times 8. Okay. What comes next in our formula?
plus or minus.
Plus or minus. And then we have a square root. Okay, our square root is b squared. So 8 squared. Minus 4 times A times C. So we're going to multiply that by our A, which is 7, and our C, which is 1. And all of that is going to go over 2 times A, which is 7. I didn't leave very much room to solve for that, but let's try it. Okay. So we have 8 squared, which is 64. And then we're going to subtract, we have 4 times 7, which is 28, times 1 is 28, right? So really that's just 64 minus 28. 64 minus 28 is 36. Okay. We have -1 times 8, which is a -8. And we have 2 times 7, which is a 14. So let's go ahead and put this all together. We have -8 plus or minus the square root of 36 over 14. I'm gonna stop there. Make sure everybody is caught up to what we're doing. Okay. Anyone have any questions? Okay, so what is the square root of 36? 6. Okay, so I have 6. So now I'm gonna write out my two equations so I can get my two solutions. So x equals -8 plus 6 over 14. And x equals -8 minus 6 over 14. And now we're going to solve these two. So -6 plus or -8 plus 6 is a -2 over 14, which is a -1/7. Make sure you simplify your fractions. And then -8 minus 6 is a -14 over 14, which gives you a -1. So our final answer, x equals -1/7 and -1. Okay. Are there any questions to that? Yes. Milo.
And it's kind of like on a different one, but like, if it's plugging in and, it says on the top -b,
Mhm.
but the b is already a negative, would it be a positive? Okay.
That was a good question. So what I want you guys to do right now is I want you to plug in all of the numbers for example 2, and then we're going to make sure you plugged it in correctly. Then I'm going to have you solve for the second part right here. We're going to check it, and then I'm going to have you find your two solutions. So I want everybody to plug in an example 2. And don't look up here until you're done, because I'm going to do this. Oh, I did steps 1 and 2. Okay, go ahead and check to make sure you've done this right so far to get this second part. And now go ahead and solve for your two solutions. Okay, go ahead and check your solutions before we move on.
Is it -1 or 1?
Oh, 1, I'm sorry. Thank you. 1. Okay, now on the back, we just have, oh, yes, I can get it. Okay, on the back is just more practice. So I'm going to do 2 with you, and then I want you to do 2 on your own. Okay, did you get it? Okay.
Only solving by the word solution and flow. Well, it have to be both because it's plus everything. I mean, yeah, but like, for example, if you got 0 and your square root, it would be one solution or.
Yes.
Oh. Yeah.
Okay. So let's do, I'm going to do example 3. I am going to walk through and talk through 3 and 4, and then you're going to do 5 and 6 on your own. But you can move on And you can even start on homework if you wanted to. Okay, so I'm gonna set this up as x equals. Now you have negative b, so that'd be -1 times b, which is -6. Plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is -6 squared. Oh, you know what? This isn't written in standard form. I didn't realize that. Make sure you write it in standard form. So this would be 2x squared minus 6x. And then if we move the 8 over, we have to subtract it. So it's a -8 equals 0. Okay, so on this page, that is the one additional step, is that you have to make sure that your equation is in standard form. Okay, so we have we have b squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is a -8. So if you don't move that over, you might think it's a +8, and then you get the wrong answer. And we're gonna put all of that over 2 times a, and a is 2. Okay. All right, now I'm gonna solve. -1 times 6 is 6, 2 times 2 is 4, and then I'm gonna solve what is in the discriminant. So -6 squared is 36 minus -4 times 2 is a -8, and a -8 times a -8 is a +64. Be very careful when you're solving in the discriminant and pay attention to those negatives, okay? And then 36 plus 64 gives you 100. You have a question?
No.
Okay. So I'm gonna rewrite this. X equals 6 plus or minus the square root of 100 over 4. And the square root of 100 is 10. So this equals 6 plus or minus 10 over 4. Now I'm gonna set up my two equations. X equals 6 plus 10 over 4, and x equals 6 minus 10 over 4. Okay. So go ahead and check your answer and your work when you have finished.
Wait, are you doing the example 4 with us?
Yeah, I'm gonna do example 4 with you. That one's a little bit different.
The 0 is just 1.
Okay, and anyone still working on this before I move on? All right, let's go ahead and go over to example 4. I'm gonna plug everything in again. X equals, so -1 times b, which is -28. Plus or minus the square root of b squared, so -28 squared. Minus 4 times a, which is 2. And, oh, I need to put this in standard form. 2x squared minus 28x plus 98. So I had to move that -98 over and it becomes positive. So times a, which is 2, and times c, which is 98. Okay, so you're gonna have to do some math here. And then 2 times 2. Oh, that's an 8. So this is when a calculator would become handy, right?
What?
So did you waste your time? So you can tell me what the answers are? Okay, so -1 times -28 is 28. 2 times 2 is 4. 28 squared. Anyone got it? 784. Good. Minus 784. equals 0. So you guys did the work there. That's great. Okay, so now we have 28 plus or minus the square root of 0 over 4. What is the square root of 0? 0. So it is 28 plus or minus 0 over 4. Well, you could set this up twice, but do we need to? No, because 28 plus 0 is 28 and 28 minus 0 is 28. So really it's just 28 over 4. So X has only one solution and that is 7. Yes.
Why can't we just like plug it into a table or something? Can we do that?
That would not be the best way to solve in this situation. When you have, I mean, I guess you could do a table, but you're gonna be using the quadratic equation quite a bit in future math. Okay, I'm gonna have you guys do 5 and 6 on your own. Okay, so go ahead and work on that. I'm gonna pause the video. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and start working this out. And I'm not gonna say what I'm doing as I walk through it. I want you to try to do it and then check as I go. Okay, if you want to check the setup, I have it set up here. Okay, if you want to go ahead and check the next step, you can. Oh. Okay, so go ahead and check the solution when you're done. Good. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and start on the next
Wait.
one. Oh, waiting. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and plug in, for example, 6. Oh, okay. Hold on just a second. Square minus 4 times 4 times 3. All over. Okay, you could go ahead and check the setup on this one to make sure you're on the right track. Okay, you can go ahead and check the next step if you'd like. Okay, so go ahead and check your solution when you're ready. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the back. And we are not going to do page 4. We're gonna stop at page 3. And we're not doing page 4 because we skipped lesson 8. And in lesson 8, there was another method of solving quadratics, and you need that lesson in order to do the back. So we're gonna skip that. And that also means I'm gonna take off 4 problems of your homework. Okay, so here we go. Last 2 problems. So the discriminant is the equation or the expression that is within the square root of the quadratic equation. And sometimes you will be asked, how many solutions will this quadratic have? And all you have to do is solve what is the discriminant, and you can identify how many solutions. So if you look up here at this key, when you can tell right here just by the graph that there are 2 solutions because it crosses the x-intercept at 2. But if you just look at the discriminant, it says that here it says there are 2 real solutions when the discriminant is greater than 0. Okay, if you wanted to write here, you can say when like D is greater than 0, D representing the discriminant if you want to. Okay. However, when the discriminant is equal to 0, there is only one real solution. So when the discriminant is equal to 0. And that example was given on 4 here, where the square root came out to be 0, right? And we only had one solution, so that would be a good example. All the other ones we did had 2 solutions. And then the third one, when the discriminant is less than 0, there are no real solutions. If the discriminant is less than 0, what does that mean you have? A negative, meaning the discriminant is less than 0 or a negative number. Okay. All right. So all we're doing in this section is we're solving for the discriminant, and we're going to identify how many solutions there are in the discriminant. I should have given some different examples, but that's okay. All right. So when we solve for the discriminant, all we're doing is we're taking 4 minus, I'm sorry, I wrote that wrong. B squared minus 4. Okay, so we're just going to plug those in. So we have 11 squared minus 4 times 1 times -10. And I just plugged in, and that's all you have to do. Don't do the divided by 2a. Don't do the negative b plus or minus. All right, so I have 121 plus 40, which gives us 161. And I did this wrong. You don't need the square root. Sorry. You don't need the square root on here. So let me just take this off. I know I do this regularly. So I'm going to take all of this off real quick. So we have 121 plus 40, which gives us 161. 161 is greater than 0. So how many solutions do we have? 2 solutions. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and do the last one. Oh, sorry.
I feel right if it was my radical. was on
I'm
there.
so sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, go ahead and solve 6 on your own and then check with my answer.
Would it be -8?
It'll be minus.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. You're right. You're right. Oof, I'm glad you guys are watching me.
Don't have examples where it's not easily.
No, I'll probably add that for next year. Okay, so we are gonna skip page 4 for right now. But that concludes lesson 8-9.